And I mean, um, the no slight to those that I don't mention. Let's just put it that way. Um, so the folks over at Skillsoft, as much as I've been pushing them over the last couple years to move towards more of their traditional e-learning content to be in bite-sized chunks, manageable, and ultimately, not less of this sort of 3-hour e-learning course. Uh, Not only have they listened to that feedback and now it's much more decoupled and much more, I'll call it nugget based, over on their Books 24/7 application, there now they have introduced something called Ingenious. And Ingenious is a quote unquote social way for users to be kind of like a la Amazon, exchanging comments and rating books. I mean, a very simple addition to something like that can go a long way because if you think about when we started out on eBay, we when eBay was sort of in its infancy, you had to sort of say, well, do I trust this seller? And you would do that by based on feedback from others. That's collective intelligence defined. And so now Books 24/7, as an example, has sort of taken that and said, all right, I'm going to trust the opinion and the feedback of someone, whether or not I want to read this book or this article or what have you. And I think that's just one little small step for a company of Skillsoft size, but they're listening to what's happening in sort of the transformation of society. So there's one for you, Rick.
And one thing that's good about that is that they're encouraging other people to take the training. By their comments, people are more motivated to take the training. And it's actually brilliant. I remember when Amazon started doing that, a lot of people said, you're allowing people to review products they didn't buy from the Amazon site. That's risky.
Yeah.
But it works. It works. And you know what? Everybody's shopping, and more often than not, Amazon does have better prices. And it's a great way to find out, well, let's see, I want to buy that TV. Is that a good TV? Is that a bad TV? Let's see what other people think. And you take it with a grain of salt because you start figuring out who has valid opinions, who's sort of just out there. And you can also see who's posting and what they've posted. It's almost like there's professional posters out there who just spend all their time reviewing products. But it does help. And I think from a learning point of view, it motivates people to actually get involved as well. If you take a class and you like it, and then somebody else takes it and likes it, all of a sudden you comment about it, maybe you can get 3, 4, or 5 more people or 100 more people involved in it. So as a result, you are now making a big difference in how that's getting, let's say, distributed throughout the whole enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, we when you sort of, I use this analogy sometimes. So when you're going on a vacation, or you're sort of saying, hey, I want to take vacation, often I think what we do is we sort of ask around our friends and we say, hey, have you been on any good vacations? Or where would you recommend that I go in Europe? Or have you been to Italy? Oh, where did you go? Where did you stay? I mean, it's as simple an action as that I think we, learning professionals, need to recognize has to be part of the equation inside our profession.
Yep.
So, when we are building out, God forbid, an LMS, don't build an LMS that's just a course taker and class scheduler. At least, if you have to have an LMS, and I can get into that rant later, but if you have to have one, build it such that you have the ability to rank a class, or you can share the feedback from a particular e-learning. Don't build an LMS that's just a schedule taker. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah, you're right. And most LMSs do nothing more than launch content. That's
exactly.
it. And you're paying a lot of money to launch content.
Exactly.
Yeah, you and I could probably have a good rant with that one. I think LMSs are the most overblown, overpriced, worthless pieces of software ever developed. But that's only an opinion, and I love all my LMS friends. So, but it's true when you consider the fact that an LMS costs more than the software that runs your manufacturing, your distribution, and your financial systems. Something is deadly wrong there.
Yeah, and that's it. So the LMS was treated like an ERP. Mm-hmm. And think about that statement for a second. Like
Well,
how well do we enjoy ERPs?
well, yeah, and I used to implement ERP systems, so I know all about ERP. It's that was my previous career. We did a lot of that kind of, and we basically to midsize and Fortune 500 type companies, we installed ERP software, and then you come in with an LMS that costs $500,000, and you just kind of shake your head and go, "All right," and what's the purpose of this? And what do you actually get out of it afterwards? Since most people never check the analytics afterwards, it's an
Right.
interesting.
Well, for our Australian friends, that's a dog's breakfast.
Yeah, I may have to call you and ask you to send me some information on the LMSs that do have the social tools, because somebody had asked me, tweeted me a question, and on is there a list that exists out there of these LMSs that do that? And I'm kind of at my wit's end in finding a conclusive list, but perhaps it's an opportunity to start building a list of those tools.
Well, I think the problem is they're not tweeting out that the fact that they do have social media content. So it's sort of interesting.
So they don't use the social media to promote their
Exactly.
social media tools.
A lot of them use social media in the intranet, not to the outside. So you have kind of a very sterile social media environment, if you will.
Well, that's very interesting. So I'll take that and go in for the jugular for a second here, because
Uh,
I truly believe that if you take an example where Learn.com was purchased by Taleo, you've got sort of this talent, career, learning, performance development, convergence happening from an application perspective. But then put on your Enterprise 2.0 hat for a second here and ask yourself, what's cropping up with ever more frequency inside of organizations? And that's collaboration platforms, the so-called social business platform or the so-called Enterprise 2.0 platform. So be that as it may, Confluence or Jive or SharePoint 2010, well, you name it. Like there's a whole whack of them there. Why are they popping up? Well, they're popping up because organizations want to connect people to people and people to content. And then when you have over here the last bastion of the Wild West, which is the LMS, as this sort of standalone thing where I go to register for a course or to take my e-learning, that's crazy. That's formal content that should have the ranking, that should have the comment, that should have discussion inside of the collaboration platform, so that informal documents like PowerPoints can live and breathe with your own internal user-generated videos, that can live and breathe with formal documents that could be a corporate report or a formal e-learning course, and they all should be searchable. They should all be able to be ranked and rated. They should all be able to be promoted accordingly.
So we're,
And
we're
so
really,
that's take. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So we're really talking an LCMS, a learning content management system, that also has learning management system capabilities. So all your content could be out there, managed, and also tie that into your social content.
Yeah, I've kind of toyed around with an acronym called CALO, the Collaboration and Learning Output. And, be that as it may, I'm still working on this. But, you know, that whole essence that you have this collaboration platform with, as I say, the wikis and the blogs, and if you build out your own YouTube internally and you build out your own Twitter internally, that's all user-generated content and connecting people to people, people to skills, mentor to mentor, content to people, and what have you. So why is learning anything different? If in fact we say that learning 2.0 is part formal, part informal, and part social, i.e. the Enterprise 2.0 bit, I don't understand why the LMS sits way over here. Why isn't that all one big happy family?
Well, that's partly because the LMS vendors haven't really approached the LMS as anything more than launching content.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a cash cow.
It's a cash cow. Though, yeah, I don't know. Some of the LMS vendors have had their rough times over the last several years because when the economy goes down, LMSs aren't so important anymore, especially if they're just launching content. Terrence, any other comments in the chat room before we finalize on this episode?
It looks like Paul has one about maybe it's probably not necessarily meant to be asked, but more, I think he's just thinking out loud. But he's just asking, will people gloss over titles and ranks instead of looking at just a thumbs up in regards to the LMS? And I'm not sure I'm giving his question justice because it's part of a thread of conversation. I was trying to find the source to where it started. So if that makes sense to you, I'll let you answer it, Dan. If not, I'll have to come back and look. Maybe Paul can comment in the comment section to elaborate more on what he's asking.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, right? I mean, I think what we've found is that when you sort of highlight sort of your top 5, top 10 in a particular faculty of content, and that could be a combination of social content, informal content, whatever, like your most viewed, I think those do have merit and weight because people say, oh, look, there's X thousand people looking at this particular piece, and look, there's like 40 discussions or comments, and look, there's 30 thumbs up. That does say something. So, I don't think there's an either or. I really think that you can use both of those opportunities to your advantage. And some cases, we at TELUS will use thumbs up, thumbs down on certain pieces of content, and sometimes we'll use ranking in terms of who's accessed what or number of views. So I don't think there's, I don't think they have to be mutually separated there.
How does that work when you do the thumbs up or other ways of commenting? Do you get a good response out of that?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing is a complete adoption of, an increasing adoption, should I say, of the way in which people are utilizing this as pervasive tools to help them in their day. So, when, rather than just having to go to the quote unquote LMS and look for the course, what we're finding now is that we're seeing intellectual exchange about ideas. So, an idea that's put out there in, say, a microblog thread, and then that leads to sort of whether people are liking that particular thought or not, and then sometimes that germinates in something. Now, I'll give you another example then, is our web jams. And I think IBM sort of coined the term, so I've stolen it. But web jams are opportunities for you over a period of whatever, 5, 10 business days to put a topic out there and using collective intelligence and the social wit of the organization to discuss that particular topic, to have people use thumbs up, thumbs down for sort of each comment, but to continue the dialogue in a very asynchronous way. And, we found a few great nuggets that we otherwise would never have thought of, based on the opportunity to social learn from people's opinions, their experience, and then from there we have gained an opportunity to either reduce money or improve a process or to gain traction on something else. I mean, to me it's the new black.
We've been doing that in California for a really long time. Every day somebody posts out what's for lunch.
Yeah.
We're very simple down here. It's all about feeding us.
Speaking of lunch, I have to ask you, Dan, what's with the fish chips and malt vinegar?
Well, I am a dual citizen from England, both Canadian and English. So to me, fish and chips and sort of malt vinegar, that analogy is, again, that we're really talking about the convergence of all of these pieces coming together. So, I don't think that you can have Enterprise 2.0 technologies without thinking through the learning implications, without thinking through the culture or engagement of your organization, without thinking through what leadership framework do you need to invest in or reinvest in with your org. I mean, to me, it's sort of it's inexplicable, and frankly, I think it's negligent of learning professionals to myopically think that they can just sit in a classroom and teach. It is right. No longer that's no longer the bailiwick of control, or control.
And let's not even talk about the back channel. That's another whole issue there while they're teaching.
Exactly. I mean, if we're so naive to think that in a classroom, and the classroom's not going away, it's still a very important part of the equation. But if we're so naive to think that, on breaks, if they're not talking about the content over the last 2 hours or what the instructor had for lunch, I mean, that's crazy. Like that was the original back channel. So now it just so happens that through Enterprise 2.0 technologies, the learning profession's being shooken up, and it's like eat or be eaten. So I'd rather play offense.
I often wonder how could some people, and really it